Libertas. I'm gonna keep on saying I like Libertas, and I like the guy he's reacting to, which is BasicLogic. I think both channels are awesome. Recommend you check both of them out and sub to both of them. I'm sub to both of them. I think this video is kind of a demonstration of the principal differences between the dissident right now and libertarian right, particularly the conservative libertarian right. I think this video demonstrates a lot of the a lot of disagreements and a lot of the misunderstanding between the two camps. And I want someone to understand this. I really grieve at the fact that right-wing libertarians, as in socially right-wing libertarians, and dissident right can't get together and agree on some stuff. Because we actually agree on a lot. No more foreign wars. America first in terms of foreign policy. Maybe not in trade. Freedom of association, gun rights, free speech, traditional values. We agree on that. And I think it really pains my heart when I see these groups fighting, when it's like we could stop fighting and start working together, and realizing that both sides have good points, both sides have some issues that we can need to fix, but overall, both sides are for the most part in the right. And especially for the America First movement, which has always been traditionally, the America First right-wing part has always traditionally been a bit more right-wing in terms of culture and always a bit more libertarian in terms of state power usage. I think it's important to remember that both camps were not technically opposed to each other. I mean, at one time, Frank Meyer, the well-known conservative libertarian fusionist scholar, invented the political concept of fusionism, which was the combination of conservatism, libertarianism, and anti-communism, a new ideology to be used as a force to defeat the Marxist state, Marxist intellectually controlling the state left. And I think that's a beauty, and I think we need something like that these days. There have been attempts to get that through. I'm kind of the latest iteration of that. You know, you had paleo-libertarianism, which was combining libertarians and paleo-conservatives back in the 90s with Rothbard and Lew Rockwell. Ron Paul's campaign always had some libertarians that were friendly with them. Modern day people who could be considered this, maybe Jay Dyer, myself. I would even say BasicLogic to some extent, but we're going to watch it and that sort of thing. So let's watch it. Quick video. I'll react to it as we go along. So this is Libertas reacting to BasicLogic's video about the new right and libertarianism and their relationship. Oh, sorry, I gotta press on it.
Yet another Christian nationalist has popped into my feed to critique libertarianism, and in his defense, this video, while very short, was much better than Jimmy Talks.
Fair. Jimmy Talks, I don't think is as intellectual as BasicLogic. No attack on Jimmy Talks here. Jimmy, if you're listening to this, no attack on you, man. But I think that is a fair criticism. I don't think you've read as much libertarian theory and stuff. You should pick up Hoppe's book, Democracy, the God That Failed, soon, so that you know what libertarianism is actually about. But, I mean, whatever. Let's go back.
I'm, of course, talking about BasicLogic and his video, How the New Right Conquered Libertarianism. While this video is much better than Jimmy Talks' video, it still is not a very good video. The entire video basically boils down to, if we can just get the right people in power, guys, then everything will be nifty. Libertarianism could never work because the state's simply too powerful. I'm really not a fan of BasicLogic's videos, simply for the fact that they cover extremely nuanced topics in a very short amount of time. Often simplifying things to the point where they bear little resemblance to the actual arguments that are given. But without...
I'm going to disagree with Libertas here. Libertas, if you're listening to this. A lot of BasicLogic's videos are only 3, 5, 7, maybe max is like, the longest ones are like 9 minutes long. 13 minutes maybe. Very short. Well, not very greatly. You'll see the animation, but very short and that sort of thing. Here's my view. I do not think that he is wrong in how he analyzes these complex issues. Because I think he identifies that you kind of have to tell people your version of what happens without some of the nuance so that they join your side. Here's a fact that no one likes hearing, but it's true. 90% of the US population, most of the US population, most of the world population are not that intellectual. Not that intellectual. They don't care that much about intellectual stuff. They, maybe they're into politics, but they're not actually into the actual theory behind it, the actual political theory, political philosophy, that sort of thing. They'll never pick up an actual in-depth book. Maybe the biggest book they ever read was by Ben Shapiro or Vivek Ramaswamy, And what I'm trying to get at is that a lot of libertarians, I think, especially make this issue of they think that people can just learn how to, people will just naturally get better and will become great political philosophers in the span of a few days or something, and if they just set their minds to it, they could get to it. Sure, that's an argument, but no one actually does that. Like, I'm sorry to put it out there, but unless if you really, really care about politics, like me, Libertas, Jimmy Talks, Basic Logic, Tom Foe, Right Wing Coalition, you're going to spawn into the issue of people just don't care. And you need to just convince them that your idea is the right. Doesn't matter if yours just isn't that terribly nuanced. The goal is to get voters on your side. If you believe that your position is the right position, your goal is to get people to agree with you. I don't care if there's less nuance in it. Like, I understand the arguments, but guess what? That's what intellectuals are for. That's what people like me and Libertas are for. That's what people like Tom Foe and Jimmy Talks are for. We're intellectual. We're reading. We're analyzing the news. We're collecting information. We're connecting the dots. If you believe that anyone can do that, which just isn't possible because we know that's not the case, you can just look at kids in school right now and understand that most people out there do not have the time span or do not have the interest in going deep into political issues like many of my listeners are. So if we believe that and we understand that, then you next have to understand that adding nuance and making it complicated while being a good thing in theory does not work in practice. It gets people confused. It gets people not truly understanding what's going on. And what it really ends up doing is it ends up getting people going to the side that makes sense. And right now, for a long time, that side has been the establishment left or just the left in general. Right? Billionaires bad. Tax the rich. Eat the rich. So if we're on the right and we want people to understand why those positions are wrong, you have to get people on our side with just very simple explanations of issues. Okay? So I'm going to say to Libertas, if you're listening to this, and this is why I love Basic Logic, he condenses issues down into 3 minutes that anyone could understand. And you might say it's not the best, it's not the most awesome of videos, but guess what? It works. It's getting people on our side. Okay? Not everyone's an intellectual. It's getting people on our side. Take the win.
Without further ado, let's check out the video.
If you're a Gen Z right-winger, you've probably had the libertarian phase. We all did. But now chances are you've become more authoritarian. How did that happen? The libertarian...
Yes, I'm pausing the video already because this is something I see all of the time from authoritarian right-wingers. And that is actually, I used to be libertarian, and then I matured and realized libertarianism would never work. And of course, they never actually were libertarian. And this isn't just some no true Scotsman. They just straight up were never libertarian. In the same way Ben Shapiro used to say that he was a libertarian, these people used to say that they were a libertarian. The reasoning for them actually not being libertarian is because they never actually researched libertarian theory, and they never actually believed in real libertarian ideals. The farthest these people usually get is the nap, and then they realize, oh wait, the nap isn't a complete philosophy, which it's not at all. The nap is not a complete philosophy. It is a base point philosophy that needs to be branched out, and is branched out. If you read Mises, Hayek, Hop, anybody, there's a lot of different ideas on how it could be done, but it is not a complete philosophy in and of itself. It's an objective one, and the world is not objective. The world is subjective, so you do need subjective law as well. And that's where other ideas from people like Hop come in. But of course, these people just realized, oh, wait, libertarianism isn't actually super edgy, and anarcho-capitalism isn't actually what I think of when I think of anarchy. So
I don't really think that's it. Like, when I got into anarcho-capitalism and when I kind of started running into the anarchy subs on Reddit, I don't really do that anymore, but I did do that earlier this summer, or earlier this year. I never really was that way. I was never like, I was that way. But even then, I just kind of always had a revulsion against just the left anarchy types. More of the reason why I went on our anarchy on Reddit was just asking some questions regarding how would the radio spectrum be divided, just stuff like that. Most of the ideas would then align with Hoppianism, which I was really into, and I'd agree. I did then go away from libertarianism for a bit, called myself a paleocon, kind of started doing that. It kind of hit after Charlie Kirk died. I kind of, for some reason, fell out with, like, Hoppianism. Maybe because I felt like I was going down I think I was just, number one, distracted because I had to run TPUSA, so I wasn't able to think deep. But, like, the TPUSA club in my school, so I wasn't able to think that deep about what I was reading. Also, I was hitting, like, the last two chapters in Democracy, the God That Failed by Hoppe, which are a bit boring. But also, I feel like there was this feeling in me that was just kind of like disinterest. Like, I kind of felt like maybe this isn't the right idea. And I think kind of crucial to that was just, for a second, I kind of had this idea of right-wing unity. And like, hey, we really got to defeat the left. And I was kind of like, my anarcho-capitalist Hoppian ideas, they can go in the waste bin for a bit. But I'm happy that I kind of came around to my senses after a while and kind of realized there's a lot of beauty in libertarian philosophy, and there's a lot of wisdom in it, and there's a lot of logical sense. I started realizing after I started just rereading a bit of it, and I just realized, yeah, why wasn't I doing this the whole time? And now I'm not as kind of anarchy pushed. I'm kind of more dissident right, but I do have significant amounts of anarchy in my mind. Like, I still have very, like, anarcho-capitalist literature, philosophy is still very prevalent in my mind. I haven't done a whole video on democracy yet. I think I will, but yeah, it's just there. But let's continue watching this guy's video. Yeah, really we gotta get going.
Dip out. I get guns and I can defend Jesus with guns, when in actuality they can't, because
that's completely a what? No one's even arguing. I never argued that. My argument was always the nap. Like, I always just was like, yeah, the nap, cool, based, awesome. I get guns, cool. I get liberty, cool. I don't have a Federal Reserve, cool. No, it's always deeper than that, of course, but that's a bit of a straw man there. And I'm going to be fair to BasicLogic. I think he actually does subscribe to libertarian philosophy to some extent. And I think he does agree with it to some extent. I think it's also important to remember that he lives in Europe right now. We live in America. Bit of a difference of mind, but also they're facing different issues than here. So, like he said, this guy said subjective, and I think that's in the strategy to get to the society we want to, which are, technically speaking, is a moral, traditional, but also free society. And to get there, it's different roads for Europe and America. Okay, it's a different path, and that just has to do with the different histories of the continents, the different geographical isolation that plays into some. The issues that Europe is facing are much more drastic than what we're facing here in America. There's just a difference of opinion to some extent in how things should be run. You can always look at the right in Europe and look at even not the neo-Nazi types, just like the fascist at the hard right, which was always more fascist leaning. And then you can look at the hard right America, which many people call fascist, but actually had significant elements of libertarian anti-statist literature in it. And you can just obviously see the difference. And a lot of that just has to do with how the countries were raised. If you're raised in Germany, which just kind of always had a very authoritarian outlook at life, you're going to come up with a bit more of an authoritarian pro-state look. Whereas in America, there's always been this distrust towards the state, and it's just kind of metastasized on the far hard right, where it just ended up being kind of these libertarian, prepper, conspiracy theorists, white nationalist types, you know? A good example would be like Hal Turner or like David Lane. Like, if you read David Lane's 88 Precepts, they're actually very anti-government in theory. And it's not just because the, you know, government's controlled by Jews. It's like, it's actually just because they fundamentally believe government is flawed. So we have to understand there's a difference of opinion, you know? But yeah, bit irrelevant.
Because it's not fucking allowed. Libertarian law and ethics and things like that are extremely complicated, so I'm just going to give a quick rundown right now. But if you do want to learn more, there's an absolutely amazing video I linked to called Anarcho-Capitalism, the Solution to Law, that I highly recommend you check out. It will be in the description down below. An extremely simplified way I like to explain anarcho-capitalism to people is basically feudalism with no king. And instead of being under your lord via birthright and him having birthright over you, you are under a contract that you can get out of and go to a different lord if you please. This lord will sell you a home in his domain, and it will function more so like an HOA, but if an HOA actually had power and to a little bit of a larger scale of an entire town or an entire city. There would be taxes to upkeep with roads, defense, things like that, the fire department. But these taxes wouldn't be coerced. They would be completely voluntary. If you don't want to pay the taxes, you don't have to live there, and you can move off, get your own land somewhere, start your own covenant, or just basically live like a hermit in the woods. It is, of course, a lot more complicated than that, but that's just a basic gist of the idea.
The slogan is, "Don't tread on me," a call to be left alone. But what happens when someone does anyway? When not just individuals, not just the state, but an entire global elite violates the non-aggression principle, especially in such covert and ruthlessly effective ways as today. Should libertarianism be "don't tread on me, pretty please"? Or should it be "don't tread on me or else"? Your answer to that question is what set you on the path to the new right.
I like the reference to Hoppe. And this is why I'm more lenient to BasicLogic than Libertas, because I do think he actually has read libertarian literature.
Because once
he knows who Hoppe is. I mean, guys, if you know who Hoppe is, number one, you're down the libertarian rabbit hole, and two, it means you've most likely read it, especially when you're referencing "will forcefully remove you." So, you know.
you try to actually defend your rights, you realize something harsh.
I've seen this video before. It's just so funny. It's like the little UN goblin guys with guns and the right-wing guy with his shotgun be like, "Get off my property!" Just like scared out of his wits. I just find it funny. Our ultimate enemy, the UN.
You alone can do nothing against a coordinated multi-state actor that doesn't play by your rules.
Cue the Joe Biden clip.
That there never been, if you wanted to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The point is that there's always been the ability to rationally limit the type of weapon that can be owned. And
Yes, of course, one person.
I do want to hit the Biden clip quickly because he's completely wrong on that fact. The U.S. fought 3 wars, actually more than that if we're going to count Syria and stuff, but the U.S. has fought multiple wars where that just was not the case. You can take Vietnam, where they did not have that amount of power, that amount of purchasing power, and they were mostly using AK-47s and homegrown explosives and booby traps. You can look at and tunnel systems, and they were able to defeat us. You can see the same with Iraq and Afghanistan. It was literally just like small arms that defeated us. What really defeated us was just the morale. They had better morale. They were fighting on home country, on home turf. If you're fighting for the freedom of your country from someone coming and invading you, or you're fighting because You're say trying to save your family or something, or you're fighting because the invader is invading and is going to implement a system that's completely contrary to what you believe in, you're going to fight like heck, and you're going to defeat that enemy. You're just inevitably going to do so. Same thing with the American colonists, which I think Libertas is going to talk about quickly. American colonists, way underarmed than the British Army, but we defeated them because we had that spirit. And that's what I'm going to hit. That's the principal issue here, is that American right-wingers have been constantly told to be against the state, but not against the state enough to take up arms against it. If we actually look at the U.S. Constitution, technically it has been violated so many times that if someone wanted to, YouTube don't ban me, I'm not saying you should do this, but if you believed you should overthrow the government, you would be technically constitutional. Not saying you should, but you would be constitutional. Wink, wink. Nod, nod. But let's continue on.
Isn't going to do anything. Amendment actually says militias are allowed. Oh my God. Like, what, are we just going to completely gloss over that? Yes, we would need people who are trained and put together and organized, just like in the American Revolution, in order to achieve what we wanted. But it would make no sense to attack now when there's absolutely no semblance of enough people for that, right? That makes absolutely zero sense. YouTube, I'm not saying that anybody should attack anybody. I just want to make that absolutely clear. But it wouldn't make any sense at all. There's no reason to be a martyr in an unwinnable fight, of course. That's just absolutely logically coherent. Of course there's not. And that's why you need to build up the systems.
I don't know. I'll say...
to actually win.
Okay. Here's what I'm going to say about this. Number one, the martyr thing. Okay. So often it's been martyrs who were in an unwinnable fight that set off the fight that was winnable. You can look at the American Revolution for this. The people at the Boston Massacre. Not really massacre, but we'll just call it that because we're patriotic Americans. What essentially happened was some people got into a fight with British troops opened fire, people died. Okay, unwinnable fight. Guess what happened? That sparked resentment, more resentment against the British, which led to us eventually winning our freedom. So yes, being a martyr for right now an unwinnable cause could lead in the future to you becoming a martyr of a cause that won. I'm just saying that. Number two, how are we going to organize, build systems, that sort of thing? Well, maybe we should work on that. Maybe instead of infighting and fighting each other all the time, the right should join together and work on that. But, I mean, obviously, when it's easier to just debunk the other guy who disagrees with you on, like, one thing, there's no reason to join him, right? I mean, this is the issue, guys. We don't join together. I mean, you want to talk about an issue? We don't join together. Libertarian right and dissident right have a lot that we agree on. There's an entire subsection of both groups, Hoppian right, that take stuff from both sides and then leave out the not so great parts, and aka the parts that just wouldn't work, the parts that are morally wrong, that sort of thing. This exists. I'm a part of it. Look, we can win this battle, but we gotta join together and stop fighting each other, okay? A lot of us have the exact same goals. The problem is we just keep on infighting, and it just doesn't get us anywhere. So, you want to talk about something, Libertas? How about you and BasicLogic get together, you collab with Tom Foe and Jimmy Talks, you create a Discord server, and you do some other stuff, and you start organizing. How about that? How about, it's easy to talk the talk, but how about walk the walk? How about walk the walk? I know I've been involved with getting people organized at my TPUSA club. I know I've been involved with getting people red-pilled and open up their eyes and all that, but why can't other people do that? I'm getting sick of the argument of, well, how about we set up our own systems? Cool. I don't see you doing it, bro. I don't see you doing it. Okay? Beautiful thing. Internet. Beautiful thing. Radio. Beautiful thing. Shortwave radio. We can use these things to our advantage. I'm screaming into a brick wall right now, and the wall is just looking at me like they don't even see me. No one understands this. We have to join sides or else we're all going to lose. Join or die, as that famous cartoon that Ben Franklin said. We need to do that. Okay? But I'm sick of having to deal with these people that talk like Libertas, who talk the talk, and then they will walk the walk. Libertas, get together with other people. Get Mentis Wave and a bunch of, all on a group chat. You can add me if you want, okay? And get the group together and start organizing. It's not that hard. We can do it. The left has been doing it for the past century. Why can't we do it, guys? Come on.
Mention the Constitution, so I think it's also important for you to note that libertarians are not constitutionalists.
A lot of them are. Look, I'm not even going to argue this, but a lot of libertarians are also constitutionalists. They see it the best way to limit government until we can reach an ANCAP society, but whatever.
Libertarian boogeyman was always the state. But to defend yourself against the leviathan of globalism, you've realized you must wield the state as a tool. It's like the gun debate. The liberal fears guns because of what they can do in the wrong hands. But we know it's not the gun that's dangerous, it's the user. Power is the same. It's a tool, neither moral nor immoral. Its stance is dependent on the wielder. Sure, power corrupts, that's a fair warning. But it's still better in our hands than the hands of those who want to destroy us.
Yes, the classic statist debate of, if we can just get the right people in power, everything will be absolutely amazing. We can sing Kumbaya and everybody will be Christian and it will be absolutely amazing. Of course, this is not how it would work at all. You can have a king or a ruler that's absolutely amazing, but when he dies, he's replaced by somebody who sends the entire country into poverty. Look at King Wenceslas IV and his father, King Charles IV. King Charles was one of the best kings in all of history, and King Wenceslas was one of the worst, being his successor. Something I will say is that most libertarians, including myself, actually prefer monarchy to republics and democracy. This is simply for the fact of time preferences as well as mob rule being an absolutely ridiculous concept. In a democracy that has term limits, the president or prime minister or whatever you want to call them rarely is incentivized to keep the country up and running after their term is over. They basically just want to get through their first term so that then they can get reelected. And then once they're in their second term, they'll just do whatever they want, basically. With a monarch, this is quite different. The monarch rules for life and thus is incentivized to keep the country going until he dies, basically. And then he's even incentivized to keep it going after he dies because his son is going to be the one who takes rule.
Libertarians love to say that we don't need a state, that private defense and mutual agreements can protect us from the Leviathan. All right, go ahead. Establish your libertarian societies. What's stopping you? Oh, right, the Leviathan.
Here's what's stopping us. You guys not joining hands and coming together. And in terms of the whole thing about, we can't have the right ruler, that's not possible. That's not true. We can have a King Arthur. We can have a King Charles IV. It's just, or third, or whatever it was. We just have to get the right guy, okay? And a lot of people say, well, no, that's just idealistic. No, it's not. It's happened. A Washington is an example. You just have to be extremely stringent on who you get in, right? You just have to be very careful. And you can't just be like, oh, well, any man will do. Like, no, you have to get like a Ron Paul, like a guy who's like a Thomas Massey or something. It's like he's with the team, like he's with us, you know, he's us, basically. I do think Massey could go a bit harder on immigration, but that'd be great. But no, it's not the way it is.
The one that won't even let you build the tools you need to defend yourself from it. And so, the new right was born, when libertarians realized the threat of their own extinction. When we realized the stakes were too high to keep fearing power itself. It's not about...
Yeah, I'll just read what he posted. The Gen Z right is characterized by a single fact: defeat is an annihilation, which means victory is worth any cost. When faced with assured destruction, nothing is off the table. I hope Christians lead this movement. When the stakes are this high and the emotions this strong, bloodshed follows. If Christians lead the movement, unnecessary suffering could be avoided. But for Christians to lead it, they must first earn the new rights' respect by showing them they're willing to do what's necessary. By showing that we are successors of the brave Christian men of history who defended civilization and served God for thousands of years, not emasculated pacifists that leftist infiltrators turned us into. And that's a good point. The right just has to... Christian, if you're a Christian and you're dissident right, hop in, whatever, just, yeah, Start becoming a man, bro. It's not that hard. Hit the gym. Not just the gym, but start learning stuff. I think there's this common misconception that to be a man, you have to be kind of a stupid, a retard. You actually need to be smart. So actually go and learn a skill. Don't just be a gym bro. Go learn a skill. Go learn many skills. Get a job. Start reading books so you know what to talk about. Don't just be a loser that's just like, oh, well, I don't really know much about politics, but I know how to do this about it with a dumbbell. I know 50 different ways to do a dumbbell exercise. No, don't be that guy, guys. We don't need more of those. Gym bros are kind of useless. Like, the only gym bros. I'll say this. There's a lot of gym bros out there that are also, like, super into health and red-pilled about that, and they're interested in other stuff, and they're not just gym bros. Those are the cool ones. I'm talking about the guys who are just gym bros, and that's it. You're kind of clavicular type fellas. And it's like, dude, like, that's it? That's it? No. You need to start reading. You need to start doing something else. Or just learning. There's good documentaries out there. There's good stuff out there, you know? Oh, sorry.
Abandoning principles. It's about proving them in real life, not just in online debate forums. Marxism is said to be good in theory, bad in practice. That's nonsense. It's idiotic in theory and murderous in practice. But libertarianism actually is good in theory, which means if we want to test it in practice...
Okay, this is why, again, I'm going to say, I don't think BasicLogic is I think he has had a libertarian past where he actually read literature. Number one, the Hoppian part, and number two, it says ideology hasn't been tried fully, but the few parts of it that were implemented immediately improved everything. So this is not some guy that's like, oh, I had my libertarian phase, and then I was like, bro, like, dude, it's much cooler to go dunk on Israel, the Jews. It's like, no. This guy's like actually has read libertarian literature, and I think Libertas is to cut him a bit of slack, you know? I understand, it's internet world, you want to be that kind of guy, but yeah.
We first need power to enforce it. Now the world order is collapsing. Democracy is dying.
Polybius' cycle of governments, this is a good one. Aristocracies always degenerate into oligarchies, which are replaced by democracies, which always degenerate into mob rule, which are replaced by monarchies, which degenerate into tyranny, which are replaced by aristocracies. It's not a matter of being pro-monarchy, it's simply what's next to fix the current situation. Politics is just a tool. Democracy is not a god to be worshipped. Yes, good point.
And as Polybius wrote 2,000 years ago, when democracies fall, monarchies rise.
What type of non sequitur is this? In order to achieve libertarianism, you need to completely ignore every ideal.
No, he was just arguing that, BasicLogic was just arguing that it's just inevitable. So if it's inevitable, we have to get our guy in charge. Now, I would debate whether it's inevitable or whether there's something to prevent this, but that's definitely what was stated.
Of libertarianism. Once there's any sort of centralized power, in order to get rid of that is extremely difficult.
Yeah, true. So why don't we get someone in charge who can help us out? I don't know, someone on the inside, a Massey or Ron Paul?
It would be just as difficult to get rid of an authoritarian right government or monarchy that spawned out of this than to get rid of a democracy. I do understand his rationalization.
That's the argument. It's going to become a monarchy or something like that. So we need to be a guy with the monarch so that he can lessen the power of the state. Not that complicated. Or we can just skip the process entirely and just end the state as it is. But to do that, we'd have to organize, and infighting isn't going to lead to organization. So, yeah.
To some sense. If the state does still exist, there is some logical rationale to try and take control of it in order to start deregulating it. But if the state has already fallen, creating another centralized system does absolutely nothing. That just sets you right back to square one. And he also just shows the cop taking the guy's guns in that clip. That's not what would happen if cops just started coming door to door. Let's be completely honest here.
Every vulture is already searching.
Sure, but how are you going to prevent it? Like, I'm just going to be honest. How are you going to prevent? Like, it takes one brave soul. And then he would just run the whole, oh, it's murder and unwilling cause. Like, that, you know, it's that argument that he's already run. Because what would happen is they would take the guns. A lot of people would probably just give them up. The weak-willed ones. It'd take one strong-willed man to die, to get shot, or to go to prison over it for him to become a martyr and for the movement to really start. So, anyways...
circling the crown, so why not seize it for yourself? even if only to make sure no one else does. After all, some of the freest eras in history were ironically under monarchs, kings who had absolute power on paper but rarely used it. Compare that to our democracies today.
That's true, actually. Medieval peasants had more freedom to some extent, but
on paper, but in practice controlling every aspect of your life. The freer you want to be, the stronger not only you, but your family and your community and your people must be. And that's the final, undeniable logic. It's not a betrayal of libertarianism, it's the fulfillment of it. The old libertarian asked to be left alone. The new right demands it.
To say people were more free under monarchies in the past isn't untrue, but it's definitely misleading. The reason people were more free in the arms that they could bear is simply because there
wasn't the argument. It wasn't about arms that you could bear. It was just about people in general. Well, maybe it was on there. I don't know. You know what? Ditch that point.
Less arms available, and those arms were also mainly used for hunting and things like that. A civilian's weapon wasn't really used back then that much for combat. Maybe self-defense, walking down the street, you'd wear your sword or something like that. But hunting swords exist, hunting bows existed, and that's what they were mainly used for. Now, the leftist argument is give up all your guns that aren't for hunting, right? Back then, that wasn't an argument that would have been in place. It's also a lot harder to regulate a stick with a pointy piece of metal on the end of it, or in the case of pikes, most of the time, just a pointy stick. I can make a pointy stick. I can make a pointy stick with a sharp piece of metal on the end. I can't make a Glock. You know what I mean? It's a lot harder to regulate things that you can just simply make in a few hours versus things that you need years of training to be able to make. Not to mention specialized equipment. Yes, I do understand that civilians in the Middle Ages did have swords that were technically military class implements. These were extremely expensive, extremely hard to get your hands on, and mostly family heirlooms. And again, it's just a sharpened piece of metal that any town's blacksmith could make at least a simple variant of. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to be it for the video. I'm sure there's some little tiny pedantic thing I got wrong that doesn't actually change the validity of my argument at all, but I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, with that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.
All right, well, yeah, that was Libertas and versus Basic Logic. Interesting video. I'm waiting for a second part of Jimmy Talks to come out. Good points. Yeah, I think he kind of misrepresented Basic Logic a tad. Hey, yeah, I'll say to Libertas, if you're watching this, want to do a collab, we can talk about it further. But, yeah, by the way, I've actually read libertarian literature, but, yeah, I mean, cool. Definitely a good channel. Both are good channels. I think there's just misunderstanding. We need to get that out of the way. And once we can get that out of the way, we can get freedom through strength and strength through unity. And, like Basic Logic had in his video. Just saying. All right, guys, this is the American Experience, broadcasting live from the greatest country on God's green earth. I hope you liked the video. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click that subscribe button, click that like button, and ring that notification bell. Drop a comment in the comment section below if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I release videos every 2 weeks or so, a week, 2 weeks, depends. I'll try to get this video out as soon as possible. Keep it relevant. Hope you guys all have a great day. Until next time, stay safe, stay free, and have a good one, folks.